what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I am giving you guys my review of Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to Cassie Clare herself, as well as everyone at Simon & Schuster for sending me an advanced reader copy of Lord of Shadows to read before release date. So today we're talking about Lord of Shadows, Book 2 of the Dark Artifices series, the third installment of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Now, this is obviously going to be a spoiler-filled review, and there's not many non-spoilery things that I could say that you guys probably wouldn't already guess. I gave Lord of Shadows 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. I cried, I laughed, it had everything I could have possibly wanted and more in it. The Dark Artifices is by far Cassandra Clare's most sophisticated and best developed work, but Lord of Shadows did not disappoint. It was a really fantastic sequel, and I don't think there would be really much I would change about it. It was so good. Please go read Lord of Shadows, read the rest of the Shadowhunter Chronicles because you know they're my faves, and then come back and we can discuss it. But bye non-spoiler people. So the first thing I want to talk about is the first 20 pages where we had this epic fight scene on the Ferris wheel at the Santa Monica Pier. Oh my goodness, it was so cool. It totally fit the whole vibe of the Dark Artifices, and I always love seeing like monuments and actual things that we have in real life come into play in these fantasy worlds. Like, it was so exciting to be like, this is where this epic fight actually happened. And I feel like this fight scene kind of gets lost in the action, and it's something a lot of people might forget about because there is so much left of this book, but I really enjoyed those first 20 pages with that epic fight scene to start off this really exciting story. Can we just talk about the fact that Ty sleeps outside Kit's door? Oh my goodness. I ship Kitty so hard it kind of hurts. But what I think is particularly interesting is there's not a ton of like romantic chemistry between the two of them, I feel. I think it's definitely going to develop in Queen of Air and Darkness and probably the Wicked Powers because I think they're going to be the protagonists. As of now, they're just becoming good friends, but they have so much chemistry and I just love every single scene they're in together. I also love the fact that Ty gave Kid his first rune. Like, it bridges everything I love about them together, and it just made me really happy. One of the things I am the most pleased with of Lord of Shadows is the fact that Emma and Mark are actually only fake dating and they don't have true romantic feelings for each other. I had originally predicted that this would go like the classic Cassandra Clare love triangle route, where Emma would actually fall for Mark, and then she would be like, is it Mark? Is it Julian? Who do I really love? Oh no. But I cannot tell you how happy I am that Emma and Mark are just very close friends, basically brother and sister. They have a very close relationship, and Mark is only helping out Emma. I feel if we had a love triangle in addition to the whole Mark, Kieran, Christina thing we have going on, it would have just been too much in the story, and I like that we were able to really just focus on Emma and Julian's relationship as opposed to this kind of tension between the three of them. I mean, there's still tension between the three of them. I just don't mean like romantic tension. One of my favorite scenes, of course, is going to be the TMI cameos. I loved when Clary and Jace entered the beginning of the story. The scene that struck me the most, and I think I really speak for everyone reading here when I say that the scene between Clary and Emma had me fucking shook. I particularly loved the kind of parallel that was made between Clary murdering Sebastian and Emma murdering Malcolm. The two of them are kind of bonded by this guilt they have over killing somebody even though they know they should have, and I just thought it came across really beautifully. One of the things I loved most about that scene was how Clary really opened up about how Sebastian has affected her over all of these years, how she's carried this burden of knowing she did the right thing by killing him, but also dealing with the fact that he was her brother, and she completely also killed the little bit of potential that she had within him, which is why I'm so fascinated by Sebastian. Like, I loved that that was touched upon. So we finally find out why Clary has said no to Jace, and I was correct. It's not because she doesn't love him, because she says that she wouldn't even have to think twice about it because she wants to marry Jace because she loves him so much, but she says no because she's been having dreams and knows that she's gonna die and she wouldn't want to hurt Jace in that way. Oh my god. My first thought was, well, Cassie Clare's gonna kill Clary in the Wicked Powers. We're fucked. There's just going to be a huge lump in my chest until we finish the Shadowhunter Chronicles because I cannot trust Cassie Clare not to kill off Clary in this moment. I don't know how to handle myself. I was crying so hard when Clary was telling Emma that she needed to promise her that when Clary does die, not if, when Clary dies, that she would tell Jace that that was the reason, and just, it's too much to comprehend, guys. So we also find out that before his death, Sebastian Morgenstern has left a weapon in the Unseelie court that Clary and Jace are on a mission to receive. I so blame Christine for this, and my first thought was, oh my god, it's Sebastian and the Unseelie Queen's baby. Christine has been pushing this theory since City of Heavenly Fire, and I've been pushing it off up until now, where I'm like, this is the only logical explanation. I don't know what it is. We're gonna find out what it is in Queen of Air and Darkness, and I'm really anticipating this finale already. So I reread Lady Midnight a few months ago in preparation of Lord of Shadows, and I had really solidified in these ships of preferring Mark with Kieran and Christina with Diego. And we find out at the beginning of Lord of Shadows that Christina and Diego are back together, and I was very, very excited. We find out very quickly that Diego is engaged to Zara, one of the Centurions, who is the daughter of the man running the Cohort, which is essentially the organization that wants to register downworlders and revive Shadowhunters to like their elitist kind of position. I was so mad, oh my goodness. So we find out later in the story that Zara just wants to become a part of the Rosales family so she can head the Institute and have control of this heirloom that Diego and Jamie have been talking about. And so Diego agreed to marry her so that Jamie could run off with the heirloom so that Zara would never have access to it. So I have to say, I have softened up to Diego a little bit after finding out that it is really a noble act. He is still an idiot and I don't like him, but I do have some compassion towards him, and especially Jamie, who I will talk about later. Livvy and Ty kiss, and I'm just like, hold up, this isn't right, this is wrong, Cassie Clare, what are you doing here? She has been setting up Kit and Ty to be together since the first book. Like, come on, they're destined to be together, and now you're gonna have Kit kiss his twin? Wrong. I particularly like the line where Kit says that he could see himself dating Livvy and befriending Ty, but something was missing. And my first thought was, oh, cause you got it wrong, cause you're gonna date Ty and be Livvy's friend, right? That's how this is gonna go. And then we get to the end of the book and I'm like, nope, that wasn't what was missing. But Christina accidentally lets slip that Julian is in love with Emma, and that's why they've been fake dating. Oh my god, I was so nervous in that moment, but I can't tell you how happy I am that that secret is now out among this group of people. It made the story so much better that we didn't have this Emma and Mark thing going on all throughout the second book like I assumed. Like, Emma and Mark parted, and now we could really set up Mark and Christina to grow together. So whilst in Fairy, we find out that the Unseelie King has somehow rendered Shadowhunter runes and weapons to not be able to work in the Unseelie land. I don't know what is going on here, but like, this is not the start of it, and I know that the Unseelie King is going to have something big for Queen of Air and Darkness. Part of me is wondering, is this the weapon that Sebastian has left behind, this way to render these Shadowhunters unable to use their runes and whatnot? But then I'm like, but he was only in accordance with the Unseelie Queen, not the Unseelie King, like how does that play? But I'm still banking on the baby. Anyways, I really liked the line from Emma in this moment where they realize that their runes and their weapons don't work, where she says, it was painful, humbling almost, to realize how much the Nephilim relied on their runes. I think that just really shows the development of the Shadowhunter Chronicles as a whole, because in TID and TMI, we're kind of always seeing the Shadowhunters as like these invincible beings that are always at the top of the food chain, always able to have the angel on their side, but in this moment, it's just their fighting skills, and I just thought it was like such a cool comparison to show their weakness for once. It also kind of referred me back to that scene in City of Glass where Valentine is talking to Ethereal about how he hates the fact that the angel didn't give them all of the powers that downworlders have naturally and they have to rely on their runes, so I just thought that was a really awesome parallel. There's honestly so many great lines in Lord of Shadows, but one of my favorites in this moment was when Emma says, my Parabatai, the only 17-year-old boy in the world who could get the King of the Dark Court to doubt himself. Because it's so true. In that moment, you could put a fearless rune on Julian Blackthorn and he like wouldn't feel a thing. It'd be a totally normal day. Which at first is like, oh, he's so cool. But then you realize the reason he's acting like this is because he can't love Emma and he feels like he has nothing to lose anymore, and it just gets really fucking sad. Yeah. So Emma is chosen as the representative of the Shadowhunters to fight the Unseelie King's champion, which I think we all knew was going to happen. What I didn't know was going to happen. I did not see this coming until the Unseelie King ordered Emma to take off the champion's helmet and finish him, and I am like, hold up. No way. The person under the helmet is Emma's father, and it relates back to the fact that the Fuga told her that she would see the person that she has loved once again. Broke into a million pieces. I like didn't know what to do in that moment. It was really, really crazy. Part of me is like yelling at Emma, Emma, you know this isn't your father. You know it's just a trick of the Unseelie Courts. What are you doing? It was super frustrating, but I can see how the first view of her father's face since his death would have blinded her, but I'm still like, Emma, you know it was a trick. So as the Centurions are now at the Los Angeles Institute, they're trying to search for Malcolm. There's been a lot of sea demon activity recently, and all of a sudden, all these sea demons start coming onto the Institute, and everyone's ready to battle. And so Arthur Blackthorn comes charging out of the house, and I am like, oh my goodness, no, Arthur's going to die. this can't happen. And then like a badass, he runs out and slices this demon stinger, and I'm like, oh my god, my king. I love Arthur Blackthorn. He is so precious. I just want the world to protect him, and I was really proud of him in this moment because we finally got to see a glimpse of him really protecting his family. It was like a very empowering scene in my opinion. But of course, 2 seconds later, Malcolm Fade is back. I think we all saw that coming, so it wasn't a huge shock, but like, of course, Malcolm is here again. So we talked about the Centurions. Now let's talk about the Cohort, which I personally saw coming a mile away from the end of City of Heavenly Fire. I mean, if you look back to all of the guidelines of the cold piece, it was literally straight out of a textbook on the repercussions of World War I. Not only does it actually make sense in this fantasy world, but it is also a very important topic that I think needs to be tackled in literature, so I totally respect Cassie Clare for including it. And although I hate the Cohort, I think it was such a great addition to the story, and I really can't wait to see how all of these tensions between the Clave, the Cohort, and the fairies and the Blackthorns and all of that comes together in the end. So in order to protect the Blackthorns from Malcolm, from the Centurions, Diana takes all of the Blackthorn children to the London Institute. This was confirmed since before the release of Lord of Shadows, and I definitely was excited about it, but as you guys know, the Infernal Devices are not my favorite of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I love them, but I definitely don't get the same excitement that a lot of other people reading these books and finding all of these references do. But I have to say, I was so surprised with how much I really enjoyed seeing them at the London Institute. I just had so much fun with like all of the annotated books from a person called Will H, and then we have the carving of Lucy Herondale and Matthew Fairchild from The Last Hours. We also get to see Jessamine again, and Jessamine was definitely not one of my favorite characters in the Infernal Devices series, but I loved that we got like a deeper connection than just these random passings. I love that Kit can see her because it's a Herondale, and they were having all these conversations throughout their time there, and it was just really cute and fun. And of course, a connection that Cassie Clare thinks she's probably really sneaky, including Evelyn Highsmith is the current head of the London Institute, and Anna Marie Highsmith is the person that Robert Lightwood had an affair with. So I hope that we'll see some connection of that, and it's not just like a kind of like name dropping or anything, so I would love to see some development on that. Honestly, I was just really surprised with how much I really enjoyed watching these new set of characters in this old setting that we used to love. It was so much more pleasant than expected, and I had a great time reading about it. So back in Fairyland, after rescuing Kieran, everyone is in the Unseelie courts, and the Unseelie Queen herself approaches Julian and brings her to her chambers. I think maybe it wasn't her chambers, but he's with the Unseelie Queen. So in this magic glass, Julian observes this really heartbreaking scene. So essentially, Arthur Blackthorn has sacrificed himself to Malcolm so that he does not hurt any of the Blackthorn children, and so Malcolm promptly kills Arthur Blackthorn. He dies. I was so sad in this moment. Honestly, I saw it coming. I knew 4 people were going to die in Lord of Shadows. Arthur Blackthorn, whilst being a character I loved, was probably one of the more disposable characters, so it totally made sense to me. The one issue I had with that scene was when Malcolm says to him, like, oh, are you sure your lunacy isn't affecting your mind? The reason I was a little upset with this is because I personally viewed that act as an act of bravery. I saw it as Arthur Blackthorn is doing what he can to protect his family, and it's a noble act. And I feel that Malcolm saying that and attributing it to his mental illness kind of denounced all of the meaning of that scene for me. You know, I didn't want this act to be seen as a lapse of judgment, and Malcolm's comment kind of made it that way, and I understand that Malcolm is a villain, but it did make me a little uncomfortable, and I would have preferred had that one quote just not have been there. So immediately, Annabel is risen, and she is alive and well. She is like the first result of true necromancy using magic that we have seen, and she kills Malcolm. I have to tell you, I was not expecting that. I had really envisioned the rest of the series being Malcolm and Annabel teaming up together to get revenge on the Blackthorns and the Clave and everyone that hurt them. But she kills him, and for hundreds of pages, we don't understand why. You know, I really expected Annabel to be like bloodthirsty with vengeance, but she just wants to be left at peace, and I can really appreciate that. So an unexpected romance that I didn't see coming, but I'm absolutely in love with, is Gwyn, the head of the Wild Hunt, and Diana. I had known from previous books that Gwyn was able to show compassion, but I really had always imagined him as like this big, scary figure that led the Wild Hunt. But like, he's like wanting to court Diana and take her out on a date, and it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. Gwyn Abnod is a freaking teddy bear. I love him so much. I love him with Diana, and I hope they grow up happily ever after. I actually do feel bad for Kieran in Lord of Shadows. In Lady Midnight, even though he came through in the end, I was still seriously resenting him for the fact that he was the reason that Emma got whipped just because he wanted Mark to return to the Wild Hunt and was being very selfish. And I still don't condone those actions, but it's really difficult watching a character believe that they have done nothing wrong when everyone else is being very resentful towards them and they don't know why. It's just really sad that like he loves Mark and he still wants to be with Mark and Mark doesn't want to, and they're kind of manipulating Kieran into staying and testifying just because he can't remember what he's done. I also want to say here, I'm fairly upset that we didn't get any like insight into what Ansel Nightshade is doing right now, because I have a really clear-cut theory on how he's related to Clary through the Nightshade line of Adele Nightshade being Clary's grandmother, and we haven't gotten any evidence on that, and I'm like really disappointed, and I just want to know what happened. Another really sweet moment that I loved from the Blackthorn family was when Livvy opens up to Julian about how she wants to run an institute, and Julian realizes that now all of these children know that he's been running the institute for all of these years, and they don't hate him for it, and they love him and forgive him, and it was just so cute. It's one of those scenes that I didn't know I wanted until I got it, and I'm super pleased with it. Another thing I thought was done so well in this book was the transformation of Emma and Julian's relationship from the very beginning of the story, where they're very cold and distant towards each other, to when they are at Malcolm and they are just sitting there laughing over cheese sandwiches. Did that fact transport anyone else to the greenhouse scene? Because it did for me. I just thought the stitching of them back together was written really well. Like, we have distinct points where they're definitely avoiding each other, where they're kind of tolerating each other, but it's still awkward, to when they're sort of becoming friendly again, and to, of course, what we all want them to be, is in love with each other. Like, it was written and constructed so well. My heart is whole again because they're parabatai again, and I'm just so happy. We also have that really great scene in Cornwall where when Julian and Emma go to the church to hopefully find Annabel, they find a demon left there as a trap, and they end up burning the stone church down with their parabatai increased powers from being in love with each other. I knew we'd have another moment like this, and I was so happy it was included because it was written so well. And as I am just like fangirling about how much I loved the fact that they got themselves back together, we have this conversation between the two of them with them blowing up because Julian is still in love with Emma and she knows it. I cried so hard when Julian says, "I thought you loved me. I don't know how I could be so wrong." Oh my goodness, it just hurts so bad. I really hate how Cassie Clare can make me so happy in one moment and so heartbroken in others. Now, of course, with the continuation of the Shadowhunter Chronicles, the world is expanding and we are exposed to this new group of people called the Riders. They're essentially these ancient fairy warriors and riders that are from the Unseelie King, and he has sent them out to capture the Blackthorns in order to find the Black Book. So first they go after Livvy, Ty, and Kit, and I spent so many pages fearing that they were captured and that everyone would have to go rescue them, but it really just ends in a really badass fight scene, which I loved. But I think the more intense one was between Emma and Julian, where Emma ends up killing one of these ancient riders who apparently should not be able to be killed with Cortana. In the fight scene with Kit, Livvy, and Ty, we find out that angel blades and seraph blades don't work on them, and only a sword would actually like kind of dent their armor. Like, they really are kind of indestructible, but Emma is allowed to kill them because she has a blade from Wayland the Smith, which can cut through everything. So I thought that definitely broadened the intensity of this novel because Emma has now killed someone that should not be able to kill. We have seen more of Cortana's powers, and I'm really excited to see what happens. I have to say, all of the fight scenes in Lord of Shadows are probably the best get of all the Shadowhunter Chronicles. There was just something about the intensity and energy and craziness of all of these fight scenes that I was really impressed by. So back to that fight scene with Kit, Livvy, and Ty. It's really one of the first scenes that we see Kit fighting, although he does do a bit of fighting in the beginning. We see him being a badass Shadowhunter, which I really loved. But one of the writers says to Kit, and he says this in more than one occurrence, that he says, "I know your face. Who are you?" My personal initial first thought was, is this a reference to Kit's mother? We don't know anything about who Kit's mother is. You know, I feel like there was another reference within Lord of Shadows where they were kind of alluding to Kit's mother. I can't remember the exact line, but essentially Kit was hearing something that he felt was familiar, but he couldn't remember who told it to him, and I was like, oh, is this another reference to his mother? So I'm kind of speculating that maybe Kit's mother has some sort of connection to the writers, but then I remember that Kit looks like a Herondale, so it might be a reference to the Tobias Herondale line, which he's from, and we might learn more about that. It could go a multitude of ways, but it's definitely significant, and I really want to find out what it is because I am super intrigued by Kit's story. So let me get to one of my favorite parts of this book, and it is when Emma and Julian are finally being honest with each other. I have to say, I am so happy with this novel, and it's part of the reason why I feel like it's so much more mature and sophisticated than a lot of Cassie's other works, is that people are finally being honest with each other. Christina and Mark are being honest with each other. Mark is being honest with Kieran later in the book. We have Jamie being honest with Christina. And we have Emma and Julian being honest with each other for the first time since Lady Midnight. So Emma, holding nothing back, tells Julian about the parabatai curse, about how if they were to continue falling in love with each other, they would be consumed by the power that comes from this curse, and they would inevitably end up with their families and themselves dead, which was a big step for Emma. And then Julian replies with what the queen told him, because when Julian was entering the fairyland, he was told by the Fuqua that he would find the person who would tell him how to break the parabatai bond. So according to Julian, the way to break the parabatai curse is to end all parabatai bonds. I don't know how to feel in this moment. I'm feeling a lot of things. This sounds so freaking crazy, and I have no idea if they're actually going to do it or not. And like, the Dark Artifices is going to change the world of Shadowhunters for forever. Literally, Lord of Shadows in one word is shook. It was honestly just so refreshing to see Emma and Julian being honest with each other. No more secrets. I really feel like this is a turning point in their relationship, and things are going to be much more open and honest and enjoyable for us to read. Also, Magnus is the king of walking in on Shadowhunters after sex. This has been a public service announcement. Another thing I really loved about Lord of Shadows is that we got more insight into Drew's perspective. In Lady Midnight, I felt like Drew was kind of just another Blackthorn. Like, we knew a little bit about her, but she didn't have a ton of substance, and she really developed in Lord of Shadows. You know, we have all of these moments where she's opening up about her insecurities about being a part of the family and how she feels like everyone kind of underestimates her and is just, she's stuck with babysitting all of the time. I really loved that we got to see more of her. I also love how Drew is kind of the connection on how we bring Jamie into the story, because Jamie's kind of hiding out into her room, and I really liked their relationship. I really hope that Jamie and Drew are developed on more in the future, because I just thought they had a really nice dynamic going. So speaking of Drew and Jamie, after Jamie has left, Drew finds this item that somehow transports her to Fairy. I literally lost my mind in this moment. I was like, oh my god, no. But the thing that threw me off the most was the fact that Drew has somehow ended up this room with a fairy boy. A fairy boy who has white blonde hair and green eyes. Sound familiar? I hate the fact that, again, my first reaction was, it's Sebastian and Unseelie Queen's baby. I tried to rationalize it and say, Emma, Drew said that he looked about her age, almost 13. The Dark War was only like 5 years ago. There was no way that the Unseelie Queen and Sebastian could have had a baby this old. And then I remember that time runs differently in Fairy. So while Mark's timeline was slowed down, and while he could probably be around like 21, 22-ish, he's still only like 17 physically. So it totally makes sense that time could have sped up, and a baby who is only like 5 years old in the mortal world could be 13 in Fairy. I am losing my mind. Anyways, I am dying to find out what is the deal with this boy and this heirloom that transports people into Fairy. I need to know what happens or I'm gonna go insane. Honestly, I'm a little insane right now, so I think that ship has sailed. So we have to talk about Diana, who is a character I have really come to love in Lord of Shadows. I wasn't a big fan of Diana in Lady Midnight because I knew she had some shady past. I really thought she might have been going towards like kind of a villain because she was super distant from the Blackthorn. But instead, we find out that Diana is a transgender woman. I honestly felt the passage of Diana's story of how she traveled to the Bangkok Institute, about how Katarina Lost gave her the hormones and the tools that she needed to be the person she has always been. It really was honestly the most beautiful passage I think I've ever read from Cassie Clare. I really felt for Diana, and I couldn't be happier to see how far she's come, and I just really want the best for her, and it was just such an emotional scene and I loved it so much. So another really wonderful surprise in Lord of Shadows is the fact that we get to see Alex and Magnus and of course Max and Raphael. I was so happy to see them implemented into the story at the end of Lord of Shadows. I love that we get to see Max and Raphael a little bit better and they're hanging out with Tavi, and it's just the cutest thing in the world. But I think the thing I loved the most was seeing how far Alec and Magnus have come from the end of the Mortal Instrument series. They are so much more mature, they are so in love, and I am just so happy to see them together. So the next bit of crazy is that Kieran attempts to summon his brother in order to get him in on their plan, but instead the Unseelie King, Kieran's father, is who shows up. And he gives Kieran back his memory, so now Kieran remembers the fact that he has betrayed Mark, why everyone hates him, what he has done, and he essentially storms out. Really, really crazy moment in my opinion. I really should have seen it coming. Again, common theme here. It was so crazy, but part of me is really happy that Kieran does know now, and he does still agree to testify for the Blackthorns in order to repay his debt to Emma. Then what I think is one of the craziest moments of the story, in my opinion, is when Magnus confronts Julian and they're talking about the fact that Julian and Emma are in love, and Magnus's advice is to tell the Inquisitor. I was so confused. I couldn't understand why Magnus would advise Julian and Emma to go to the Clave, who we believe is going to probably prosecute them and strip their marks, and it was just so crazy for him to suggest that, in my opinion. I also really, really loved the fact that Ty had figured out how Annabel and Malcolm used to communicate, and he left a note for Annabel, and that is the reason that Annabel is now helping the Blackthorns. Ty is honestly so smart and creative. I really love his character more than I could have thought I would have. He's so valuable to this story, and I love especially that Kid above all is the person who really encourages him to do things his way and to continue excelling. I just feel like Kid is so supportive to Ty, and I really love that aspect of their relationship as well. So while everyone is in Idris and they're preparing for the meeting of the Cohort and the Clave and Annabel and Kieran and everyone, Emma and Julian open up to Robert Lightwood, and he surprisingly does want to help them. I really did not expect that. I thought the story was going to take a completely different turn, but he does say, give me a few days, I'll see what I can do for you, and it just honestly gave me so much hope that of course was ripped away a couple pages later, but in that moment it was so much hope. And then of course one of the most exciting moments in the book is that Helen and Aline are back. I was so happy to see them all together, to see all the Blackthorns together, especially Mark and Helen together. Oh my goodness, my heart. That was the big happy moment at the end of the story that we needed, that of course turned to complete crap a few minutes later, but I'm just holding on to the fact that I love the fact that Helen and Aline are back and they are going to fight with the rest of the Blackthorns in order to overcome whatever the crazy antagonist is of Queen of Air and Darkness. Now, another interesting little subplot that I feel like wasn't really expanded on in Lord of Shadows, but probably will play into the following books more, is that Magnus's magic is depleted, but it seems as if it's more than just depleted as we've seen in previous books. He seems to actually be sick and there's something affecting him. It is also mentioned that Jem and Tessa were off looking for a cure, but Tessa is now sick as well. So it seems like something is really affecting the Warlocks. Does it have to do with Magnus Bane? Does it have to do with Annabel or the fairies? Like, what is going on? I want to know, but I just really want Magnus to be okay. There's one line I really love from Alec because it totally encompassed all of the character development and growth he's gone through since the end of the Mortal Instrument series, and it really warmed my heart. And that's when Zara actually confronts Alec about some of his own previous insecurities that is a big part of City of Fallen Angels and City of Lost Souls. How Alec is going to die one day and Magnus is going to go on and live his life, and Alec has always previously feared that he would just kind of disappear into the great experience of Magnus's life. And he says, anyone can die at any time. You know it helps to get better, knowing that there will be someone who will always remember you. Always love you. Until the end of the universe, Magnus will remember me and love me. And it really warmed my heart to see Alec be able to say something like that, and I know it was something so genuine to come from him. Really beautiful moment in my opinion. So then the trial starts, and Annabel opens up about the fact that she is the person who killed Malcolm and not Zara. And of course, none of the Centurions want to believe it because they want Zara at the head of the Los Angeles Institute to forward their own agenda. So, of course, like Shadowhunters, their decision is to make Annabel hold the mortal sword so that she can't lie. Which is absolutely horrifying because Annabel was previously tortured by the Clave. She doesn't trust them and this is not what she signed up for, but they forced her to hold the mortal sword, and it was honestly such a hard scene to watch because I could tell all of those past experiences just coming to light once again, and Annabel is reliving them. And as a result, everything goes to shit. Annabel ends up stabbing Robert Lightwood. Robert Lightwood is now dead. I have to say, I really didn't expect Cassie Clare to kill previous characters from other books in Lord of Shadows, but she did. Robert Lightwood's now dead. I have to say, I wasn't the saddest about his death because I never really had a close relationship to Robert Lightwood because of how he treated his children in the Mortal Instruments series. But it took me an entire day to realize that the one person that Emma and Julian had confided in and was going to get help from is now dead. So that one route of possibly having a way for them to be in love, to not break all parabatai bonds and have this work out, it's gone as of now. Classic Cassie Clare tradition. And of course, my heart is breaking for Alec. Just all those moments of him calling for his dad were just so sad. And then of course, Emma uses Cortana to shatter the mortal sword. The second of the mortal instruments, this ancient sword that was given to Jonathan Shadowhunter from Raziel, is now shattered as a result of Cortana, and I really don't think there's anything that Cortana could do except severing all parabatai bonds that would really compare to showing its power. Like, that was so insane in my opinion. So here I'm thinking, it's over. We've got like 3 pages left at this point. Annabel is defenseless. Like, what's gonna happen? Annabel uses what is left of the mortal sword to stab Livvy in the chest. And Livvy dies. I was so taken aback and shocked at this moment. I could not even cry. I didn't know how to comprehend the fact that we literally had 3 pages left and a main character is now dead. I have to say, as distraught as I am over Livvy, because I had really grown to love her, especially in Lord of Shadows, I really have to commend Cassie Clare for taking such a huge risk. I have always said personally that I felt Cassie Clare didn't take huge risks with her deaths. They were either reasonable, they were either not main characters. If they were a main character, like in the Infernal Devices, it was like the best case scenario for this character to die, or else she killed villains, which is just kind of a given. But now she has brutally murdered a main character that people have loved and people really resonated with, and she's dead. And I am horrified and upset, and I can't even think about how Queen of Air and Darkness is going to start because of all of these emotions from her huge family. But I really, really have to give it to Cassie Clare for impressing me beyond belief and doing something so many authors probably wouldn't have had the guts to do. Like, I was ultimately very, very impressed in that moment. But to really get you guys to understand how messed up in the head I was after reading this book and having Livvy die, I literally was off balance for about an hour. I showered, I couldn't stand, I had to sit because my whole body was so messed up because all I could think about the fact that Livvy was dead. I'm so sad, guys. I'm honestly so sad. Now, the last thing I want to talk about that really has me like completely shook at the end of Lord of Shadows is really, really subtle, and I actually didn't pick up on it until skimming through again to make sure all my notes were in order, is that Annabel disappears through this mysterious smoke that comes out at the guard. But after disappearing, there is this symbol that Emma notices, which is half a crown, which we've really come to associate with the Unseelie King. So why is the Unseelie King involved here? What does he have to do with Annabel now after having centuries without each other and Annabel not wanting to associate with him? Like, was this planned? Has he now taken her prisoner? Like, I have no idea what's going on, and all I want to do is just know what's going on. There's so many different theories and things to think about for the upcoming books that I really just can't even comprehend the fact that I have to stay in this state for 2 freaking years. I'm actually gonna go insane. So that is really it for my extremely long ramble of thoughts on Lord of Shadows. I loved this book with all of my heart. I can't say for sure if I think it's better than Lady Midnight or if I think that it is my favorite book of all time from the Shadowhunter Chronicles, but it's definitely at the same caliber of Lady Midnight, and it goes along with the fact that I think that this is Cassandra Clare's best work. I loved it so much. I would love to know all of your thoughts below. Please leave me paragraphs. Let's chat about everything that happened in this massive book. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!